Well, it's so good to have all of you with us today. My name is Chris, and we're starting this very brand new series, Mental Mayhem, we'll kick off this brand new year. It is 2026. And I love this time of year because we get to look back at the previous year and look forward, anticipate what is to come. A couple of weeks ago, I looked at some research that had already been conducted on people's New Year's resolutions. And I get, for some of you, gave up doing resolutions years ago. You're like, I'm not going to accomplish it anyway, so I'm just not going to even try. But I still like to write them down. I still like to have them. And they did this research, so it's like, what are the top resolutions? What are the top goals for people in 2026? And this list is not going to surprise you. I mean, this is just what gets put on the list almost every year. In the number one spot is that to exercise more, 48%. In fact, that's on my list. I already have my workout plans. I have my race schedule. I am ready for 2026 to exercise more. In the number two spot, again, nothing new, to save more money. You've just come out of a season where you spent a lot of money between Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. You've made some unwise and wise financial decisions in 2025, and you're looking forward going, I just want to be wise. I want to save more. I want to be careful with every dollar spent. In the number three spot, we have, eat healthier. I'm glad that it says eat healthier, not just eat healthy. Because eat healthier means that you could still go to Taco Bell, per se, and order what you want and then drink a Diet Pepsi, because that's healthier. Or you could order an entire pepperoni pizza and then grab a couple of those itty-bitty baby carrots, right? That's healthier, right? To eat healthier. And then in the honorable mention spot, in the fourth spot, I was really excited to see this. 42% said more time with friends and family. And I love seeing it there, that people are paying attention to have healthy relationships. In fact, the last weekend, we were all gathered online. And the message that I shared with all of you was literally titled, Together, that we are better together. And if you missed that, I just can't encourage you enough to go to tcconline.tv/together. Watch that message, because we are better together. And my prayer for all of us in 2026, if you're married, that you have the best year with your spouse. If you're dating someone, the best year with the person you're dating. With your close friends, that you have the best year with your friends. If you're a parent or grandparent, that you have the best year with your grandkids, with your kids. And I get all of us have stories from 2025 where that person, those people hurt us, and when someone hurts us, we want to isolate, we want to shove away, we want to get rid of. But here's the thing. We were created for relationships. We are better together. And in fact, it's why this series, Mental Mayhem, is so important. Now, if you've stopped doing New Year's resolutions, New Year's goals, I get why. Because all of us know the statistics. I mean, only 9 to 10% of all people will actually keep their New Year's resolution throughout the entire year. The vast majority of people will actually stop doing their New Year's resolutions the first week of January, and the next vast number of people, the majority of people, will be done by the end of January. I mean, that is true. And that's why some of you just stop doing them and you're like, I'm just going to give up anyway. Why try? And so many times when we think about, why don't I? Why don't you? Why don't we keep our New Year's resolutions? And so many times it can get connected to things like, we as human beings need to learn how to create better habits. In fact, I read a book one time called Atomic Habits, and I tell you, it's a game-changing book. I recommend all of you reading it. It's a great book. It talks about the 1% daily getting better at something. It talks about how systems are greater than goals. I mean, great insight on how we humans can work on establishing new, healthier habits. But I think the reason why we don't keep our goals, our New Year's resolutions, is far deeper. There's a reality, and maybe you've never thought about this before. There's a reality that collides in January. These two realities are working its way throughout the course of our year, but January, the intensity in which both of them find themselves and the tension that they create, I think they're at the cause of why so many of us don't keep our resolutions. It's why months like January are so difficult. These two realities are this: the post-holiday disorder or the holiday blues and the seasonal affective disorder. Now, I don't know who came up with seasonal affective disorder, but it spells sad. I know, it doesn't feel real encouraging. And both of these disorders are, alive and well in January. And they feel very similar, but they are vastly different. You see, the post-holiday disorder is a temporary sadness. It's that feeling where all of a sudden you take down all of your Christmas decorations, the Christmas lights, the Christmas trees, all of it. And you find yourself sitting in your family room, and the house just feels empty. You drive home late at night, and there's no Christmas lights on the house, on the outside of the house. There's no Christmas lights on the inside. All right? It's that sadness where December was filled with parties and baking, and phone calls and Christmas cards and presents, right? All of that, and all of a sudden January, what is there? And the seasonal affective disorder, it's literally a clinical depression. The post-holiday season lasts just a few weeks, where the seasonal affective disorder can last months. And the post-holiday disorder is, situational. Again, it's tied to a holiday. Now, it doesn't have to be Christmas or Thanksgiving or New Year's. It could be, any other holiday. For some of you love July 4th. I mean, you love July 4th, right? And you can feel that after that. But I think for most of us, right, this is such a long season with three of the biggest holidays that we feel it in January. And for the seasonal affective disorder, it's seasonal. It's tied to the weather. I mean, literally, as they've done the research, it's tied to how much sunshine you get or not. And we live in Pennsylvania, where we're not going to see the sun until May. And both of these, again, collide together in January. And that's why I think it's just fitting for us to spend some weeks together having a conversation, making our way through this series, Mental Mayhem. For us to recognize, and the tagline of the series is so important, to recognize that we need to overcome our thoughts that wreak havoc, because our thoughts engage with our emotions, and our emotions drive us into action. And our thoughts and our emotions and our actions they're all spiritual. Why? Because we are spiritual beings. In this entire series, Mental Mayhem, we're going to be following along the storyline of a guy named Elijah. Not a perfect guy, didn't have it all together guy, but he was faithful to God. He did trust God, even in seasons where it was challenging for him. We don't know a lot about Elijah. We don't know kind of his backstory. He just kind of shows up on the scene. But what we do know is kind of his purpose, his role, his profession. You see, Elijah was a prophet of God. The word prophet simply means he was a spokesperson for God. But before we get to the first time Elijah is introduced in the Old Testament, we need to understand, we need to grasp kind of the intensity of the political and spiritual, and those two things were connected together, landscape that was happening in this part of the world. So as we step into 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 29, it gives us a great insight into, well, what was happening and what's going to take place. This is what's written. In the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah. Now, remember that God's design was to have Israel as one united kingdom. Saul was the first king, then David became king, and then David's son Solomon became king. But after Solomon, the kingdom divided. 10 tribes went north. That became Israel. That was called Israel. 2 tribes went south. That was called Judah. And so we're getting the picture that Asa was king of Judah, the 2 southern tribes, the southern kingdom. And Ahab, son of Omri, became king of Israel. So the northern kingdom, Israel, got a new king. And he reigned in Samaria over Israel for 22 years. And then we're given kind of a report card on, well, Ahab's 22-year reign. And this is what the report card says. Ahab, son of Omri, did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than any of those before him. Now, there were 6 other kings of the northern kingdom of Israel before Ahab, 6 others. They all did evil. But his report card goes, no. He set the bar higher than any other northern king before him. That's how evil he was. The author continues because he not only considered it trivial to commit the sins of Jeroboam. Now, what were the sins of Jeroboam? Well, you go back to Jeroboam and you start reading about that. This is what Jeroboam did. He wanted to get rid of, the people worshiping God, Yahweh, the one true God. So he constructed 2 massive golden calves for them to worship those. He kind of outlawed them traveling to Jerusalem where the temple was to worship God there. He actually established 2 other places, one north and one south, and made them go worship there so they would have to avoid the temple where God dwelled. He also, the Levites were the only tribe that priests could come out of, and he kind of said, you don't have to be a Levite. I don't care who you are. Anyone could be a priest. You see, Jeroboam intentionally tried to get every single person he could not to worship God, Yahweh. And what we're told about Ahab is, that was just little stuff. That was little evil. That's trivial stuff. Again, Ahab set the bar as high as he could for being an evil king. In fact, he married Jezebel. We'll hear a lot about Jezebel in this series. He married Jezebel, daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians, and began to serve Baal and worship him. Now, I want to pause quickly because we have to understand this Canaanite pagan religion that had really taken over this entire region. Now, there's some murkiness around all of this Canaanite pagan faith structure. Why? Because thousands and thousands of years ago, right, there's this murkiness in history. But what experts have kind of gathered is the Canaanite faith structure started with the god El. Now, this probably looks familiar to you because this is just kind of a generic name for God. That's why God's personal name, Yahweh, is so important. So in different areas of the world, in different languages, like El became like just the placeholder, like our word God, right? You could spell it with a capital G or a lowercase g, right? God, right? It became that kind of generic word. And then the Canaanite faith, right? El was kind of the main God. But over the course of time, he married, a goddess named Asherah. And then once he married Asherah, all of a sudden El kind of fades into the shadows. And all of a sudden, Baal emerges. And now Baal is married to Asherah. And these become the 2 primary gods of the Canaanite pagan faith. Asherah was the fertility goddess, and Baal was the weather god or the storm god. The name means one who rides on the clouds. And this is why the Canaanite faith structure was so powerful, so attractive, and so damaging. It hit on two real human felt needs. The first one was just around living a life. You see, if there was no rain, then there was no grain. And if there was no grain, there was no life. You see, the Canaanite faith structure with Baal and Asherah really hit into the people's need to eat, to live, the demand for rain. And remember, Asherah was the fertility goddess. And it hit on this, drive for sex. You see, in these ancient pagan faith structures, many of them believed in what was called sympathetic magic. That they believed as human beings, what they did on earth could influence the gods, the goddesses. And so the Canaanite faith structure believed that, if you walked into a temple and worshiped Asherah and Baal and engaged with temple prostitutes, that you could convince Asherah, the fertility goddess, and Baal to bring rain to the land. And so Ahab, intentionally, because he was after power, because he understood to get more power, he had to play the political game. So he married Jezebel, the daughter of a foreign king who, they all practiced Baal worship and Asherah worship. And so because of that, his hunger for power and his understanding that he had to play the political game to get more power, that he was going to have to persuade the people to not worship God, but to worship Baal and to worship Asherah. The demand for rain, the drive for sex. And all of this sets the tension. I'm talking red-lined tension for where we're going to go as we follow the storyline of Elijah. And then all of a sudden in chapter 17, we're introduced to Elijah for the first time. Now Elijah, the Tishbite from Tishbe in Gilead. Now that's a line, but basically he was from this region of Gilead, which is on the east side of the Jordan River, on the east side of Jericho. It was a very mountainous, rugged terrain. So I want you to get this picture that Elijah was this mountain man. He was a rugged man. He lived in harsh conditions. And Elijah's name is really powerful. It's two words slammed together. The word El, there you go. You recognize, right? That's the name for God. That's the kind of the generic name for God. And Yah, which is God's personal name, Yahweh. That Yahweh is my God. And Elijah, this mountain man, the Tishbite from Tishbe, from Gilead, said to Ahab, meaning Elijah goes finds the king. I mean, he doesn't work up the channels. He doesn't send a homing pigeon to the king. No. He goes finds the king. He walks right up to the king who has all the power, who has political influence. And oh, by the way, he's persuaded a whole bunch of Israelites to kind of follow his lead. And Elijah doesn't care. He walks right up to the evil King Ahab and says, as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, my God lives, not your gods. My God is alive. And my God, whom I serve. Hey, Ahab, I don't serve you, and I don't serve your wife, and I don't serve Baal, and I don't serve Asherah. Hey, Ahab, I serve Yahweh, the one true God. And looking at Ahab in the eyes, he said, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except on my word. You see, what God was doing through Elijah was going to the very epicenter, the theological foundation of the Baal, Asherah, the Canaanite pagan faith structure. God's like, I'm going right at the core. And who is God using? Elijah. And so a drought, a famine was going to enter the land. And then God says to Elijah, we're told the word of the Lord came to him. Leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan. Think about this. God, through Elijah, draws the battle lines. And then all of a sudden, I mean, you could imagine, we don't know, but you could imagine how Ahab responded when all of a sudden Elijah says to him, hey, by the way, it's not going to rain. I don't care how much you and your people worship Asherah and Baal. I don't care how much you try to convince your fake gods, Asherah and Baal, to bring rain. Rain's not going to come until my word, until God tells me to speak. And then rain will come. Could you imagine? Because all of Ahab's political power was going to go away. Because he's persuaded all the people to worship Baal, to worship Asherah. And when that doesn't work, then what? God was going at the theological foundation of that ancient Canaanite pagan faith structure. So God leads him to a place to hide. And then God says to Elijah, you will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there. So now he's going to have to drink from the river and then wait on ravens. Now here's the thing. I mean, we all know that ravens are disgusting birds. Like, they're loud, they're big, and they're dirty birds. But during this time period, in the Jewish faith structure, ravens were literally classified as unclean animals. And God chooses to use an unclean animal, a raven, to feed his spokesperson, his prophet, Elijah. Now, I want to pause there for a moment. There's 3 quick insights I just want to pull up to just this quick interaction between Elijah and Ahab and Elijah and God. And it's going to guide the rest of our time together today and this entire series. The first insight is this: you've got to lean into the challenge. And we see Elijah leaning into the challenge. He's leaning into it. God calls him out of Gilead. Yeah, Elijah was minding his own business. And God's like, hey, come on, Elijah, I need you. Go speak to Ahab, the evil King Ahab. Go speak to him. And Elijah leans in, and God goes, hey, this is what I want you to tell him. Elijah does that. And then all of a sudden God says, hey, go hide. And he goes, okay, I'll do that. And all of a sudden God's like, here's some water in the brook. That's how I'm going to give you water. And then, oh, by the way, I'm using unclean birds, the ravens, to supply you. You just see over and over again Elijah going, okay, I'm leaning in. I'm leaning in. I'm leaning in. Which leads to forcing Elijah to let go of control. He had no control when he went in front of Ahab. He was just trusting God. He had no control when he went to hide out in this mountain, this river. He's like, okay, God, I'm going to follow your lead. Which leads into this third reality. He was living in total reliance. Okay, God, thanks for the water. And okay, if you want to use unclean birds to feed me, I guess I'm just going to rely on you to live. And you're going to see this over and over and over again. In fact, you're going to see it just what happens next. We're told that some time later, the brook dried up. Why? Because there's no rain. The brook dried up. Then the word of the Lord came to him and said, hey, Elijah, go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon. Now, pause there. Where's Sidon? Well, Sidon is where Jezebel is from. That's her home region. And God now is sending him. I mean, if you thought Ahab was evil, and again, he was the evilest of all the kings, I'm just telling you, Jezebel made Ahab look like a Boy Scout. I mean, Jezebel. And God's like, hey, Elijah, I now want you to go to her homeland in Sidon and stay there. I've directed a widow. And Elijah had to scratch his head. What, a widow? We're in a famine. We're in a drought. How is she surviving? How is she getting food? You want me to go find a widow there to supply me with food? And God's like, yeah. Yeah, let go of control, and you got to rely on me. Come on, I got you, Elijah. I got you, Elijah. I got you, Elijah. So guess what Elijah does? He leans into the challenge. He travels to the evil Jezebel's homeland. He finds this widow, says to her, hey, do you have some water? And oh, by the way, do you have some bread? And the widow replies to him, as surely as the Lord your God lives, I don't have any bread. In fact, I only have a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I'm actually gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son that we may eat it and die. This was like their last meal. I told you, conditions were horrific because there's no rain. And God sends them to enemy territory to find a widow that literally was fixing her last meal for her son, and they were just going to die. And Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first, make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me. And then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land. You see, I think about our first interaction to learn about Elijah and how his life was filled with so many unanticipated moments. He was doing his own thing, living in Gilead, living in the mountain region, living in isolation, and all of a sudden God chose him. And all of a sudden, all of these unanticipated moments, talking to Ahab, what he said to Ahab, going to hiding, eating from ravens, finding a widow in the evil Jezebel's homeland. The widow is getting ready just to go home and die with her son. And then all of a sudden, God, through Elijah, is like, that little bit of amount of flour and that little bit of oil will not dry up, will not go empty until rain comes. I mean, think about all of these, and these won't be the only unanticipated moments. But here's what Elijah did. He just anticipates that God is going to be God. Think back to 2025. Your 2025 was filled with some unanticipated moments. Some small, little unanticipated moments and some pretty big ones. And my encouragement for all of us as we look into 2026 is I just want you to have this position of your heart, knowing that there's going to be more unanticipated moments to come your way. It's going to happen. But this is what I want you just to mentally prepare for. I want you to anticipate how you're going to respond when the unanticipated moments come your way. I want you to have a position, a life position, a mental position, a heart position, a soul position to say, hey, I know it's going to come our way. Well, we all know it's going to happen. Financial unanticipated emotion, relationship unanticipated moments, health unanticipated emotion. I mean, all of that's going to come our way. I want you to have a position in your heart, in your mind, in your soul to say, okay, I'm going to anticipate. I'm going to understand that life is going to crash in on me, but how I respond matters. And when you have that position to anticipate how you're going to respond, you know what you're going to do? You're going to lean into the challenge. Can you feel that? When we just focus in on all of a sudden that unanticipated moment crashes in, we're like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Oh, that hurts. I never expected she. I never expected he. I never thought I'd get that phone call. I never thought that job. I never thought financially I would, right? When we just lean into all that unanticipated, right, it just pushes us back on our heels. But when we anticipate, it pushes us forward to say, hey, I'm going to lean into the challenge. No matter what comes my way this year, 2026, I'm just going to lean into the challenge. And we can lean into the challenge. Why? Because we're like, hey, God, I'm going to let go of control because you're in control, I'm not. And hey, God, I'm going to live in reliance of you. I'm going to trust that you're going to provide in some of the really cool ways. And guess what? In some of the really weird ways, like feeding me with a raven. Hey, God, I'm just trusting you. I'm leaning into the challenge. Whatever the challenge is, God, I'm going to lean in. Why? Because I trust you. I'm letting go of control. I'm living in reliance. And here's my encouragement for you, just this week. Wake up, saying, God, in the unanticipated, I'm going to anticipate you being you. Hey, God, I'm going to lean into the challenge. Hey, God, I'm going to let go of control. Hey, God, I'm going to live in reliance. And watch what happens with the thoughts in your mind. Let's pray. Lord, I pray that we have the same posture as Elijah, because we know the unanticipated is going to crash into us. So, Lord, may we anticipate our response. Because, God, you have us. You got us. May we lean in. May we let go. And may we just rely on you. In your name I pray. Amen.